All right, everybody, get ready. We are diving deep, deep, deep into the 4-Hour Workweek. This one is by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah,
And it's a book that really kind of throws out that traditional, like, work-life balance idea
it really does.
and kind of helps you design a life that you actually want to wake up to,
Yeah.
you know, not one you're just trying to escape from.
Yeah, it's interesting. This book has really become a modern classic.
It really has.
And it resonates with a lot of people who are just kind of over that whole idea of the deferred life plan.
Right.
Like you're just grinding it out now, and then when you retire, then you can finally enjoy yourself. But
Yeah.
like, why wait?
Why wait?
Yeah, and Ferriss is saying that. Like,
Yeah.
why wait? He makes a really good point for designing a life that prioritizes your time and mobility and freedom right now,
Now.
not in the future.
Yeah. Not like years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And he calls this group of people the new rich, right?
Yes.
And it's not necessarily how much money you make,
Mm-hmm.
but it's how you're spending your time,
Mm-hmm.
how you're spending your resources.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about that freedom and flexibility.
Okay, so how do we do that? Like, how do we actually go from being stuck in this, like, daily grind to living a life like that
Yeah.
with freedom and purpose?
Yeah. Well,
Because I think we've all had those moments where we thought, man, if I just had a little bit more time or if I had a little bit more freedom.
and you know what? A lot of times, one of the biggest things that holds us back is fear.
Totally.
We're afraid to fail. We're afraid of what people think. We're afraid of the unknown.
The unknown is scary.
Yeah, exactly.
And, he has this really great technique, or I guess you could call it a technique. He calls it fear setting.
Yeah.
And it's not about ignoring your fear. It's actually about confronting those fears head on.
Yes.
So you would actually sit down and write out your worst case scenarios.
I love that he says that too, because like what's so fascinating about this approach is that when you actually force yourself to look at the worst case scenario,
Yeah.
you realize you're like, oh, it's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And even if it did happen, I could probably figure out how to recover.
Yeah, like you'd be okay.
Yeah. You know?
Yeah, and he uses himself as an example. Like he was terrified to travel the world by himself.
Right.
And so he planned for everything. Like he was like, okay, what if I get robbed? What if I get sick? What if I get kidnapped? Like he thought of all these things that could go wrong. And guess what?
What?
None of them happened.
Right.
And it totally changed his perspective on things.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that, the fear is usually a lot worse than the reality.
Totally.
And just taking that first step. Like, even if it's a little scary, it's usually the hardest.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's say you've faced your fears. You're ready to design your ideal lifestyle.
Okay.
Where do you even begin?
Well, so Ferriss talks about something called the 80-20 rule, which you've probably heard of, also called the Pareto principle.
Yeah.
And that principle states that 80% of your results, they come from just 20% of your effort.
That's a big one.
It is a big one. So it's all about finding out what that 20% is, the stuff that's really moving the needle, and putting your effort there.
He gives an example in the book from his own business where he realized that only 5% of his clients were generating 95% of his revenue.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was spending all this time on these other people who weren't really contributing to his bottom line.
Right.
And once he shifted his focus, his business completely changed.
Yeah. It's about working smarter, not harder.
And you can use that for so many parts of life. It doesn't have to be business.
Exactly.
It could be, what is giving you the most joy? What is giving you the most fulfillment?
Yeah.
And focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Focus on the things that matter.
And this reminds me actually of something else that he talks about, creating what he calls your muse.
The muse. Yeah.
And this is where I feel like things get really interesting because
does.
this is like, okay, how do we actually make money doing this?
Yeah, the muse is basically a business or an income-generating asset that runs, ideally, with minimal involvement from you,
Okay.
so that it frees you up to do the things that you want to do. Pursue your passions. Live life on your own terms.
Yeah. And he actually gives you kind of like a step-by-step process for this
He does.
of how to find a good niche and how to brainstorm product ideas and how to even test it out without spending a ton of money.
Yeah, like you don't need $1 million idea. You just need a good idea that meets a need.
And he uses this great example of this guy, Doug Price, who made this whole business selling sound effects.
Wow.
I know. Like, how specific is that?
I love it. That's so cool.
But he partners with sound libraries. He has the marketing, he has the sales, and then they ship directly to the customer.
Wow.
So he doesn't even have to deal with any of that.
It's brilliant.
I know. It's a really good example of you don't need this crazy big idea. It's more about finding something and then using technology, automating things, creating a business that can kind of run itself. And to me, that's like the epitome of the new rich.
It really is. It's almost like you're finding a treasure map, right?
Yeah,
You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to like find the right map, the right business model that works for you
totally.
and that like, aligns with your skills and your interests.
For sure. And he actually gives you the tools to do that. Like he even talks about in the book how to negotiate with your current employer for more freedom, more flexibility, like having a remote work arrangement, for example.
Yes.
And I have to say, this part really resonated with me because, for me, the traditional office setup is just like,
It's not for everybody.
it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, like, I've always thought there has to be a better way.
Right. And there often is. And he has a whole section on how to negotiate with your boss, even if you think they're going to be resistant to the idea.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like he talks about starting with a trial period. So maybe like 1 day a week, working remotely or something like that to kind of prove that you can still be productive outside of the office.
That's actually a really good strategy because it's a lot easier to get someone on board with a small change
And a huge, drastic one.
than something huge. And they can actually see, oh, this is actually working.
Yeah, this is beneficial.
I mean, this could be a permanent thing.
And he talks about like framing it in a way that benefits your employer, right? It's not just about you. So highlight how working remotely could actually like boost your productivity or how it could reduce overhead costs for the company or even just like, improve your work-life balance, which makes you a better employee for them.
That's a good point. So it's like a win-win.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say you've got the remote work situation figured out.
Okay.
You're building your muse, you're conquering those fears.
Yes.
You're focusing on that crucial 20%.
Yes.
What's next?
All right. So how do you actually design a life now that is fulfilling, that's meaningful, not just one that's free from the 9 to 5?
Right, because that's the thing, right? Like anybody can,
It's not just about having free time.
it's not just about like sitting on your couch.
Exactly.
So he introduces this thing called the DEAL framework.
Yes, he does.
And this is basically a roadmap for designing your ideal lifestyle.
It is. It is.
So DEAL stands for I love a good framework, definition, elimination, automation, and liberation.
I love how you break it down like that. I'm a framework person too. I love it.
Yes. Okay, break it down for us.
Okay, so definition, that's like step 1, right?
Okay.
And that's all about getting really clear on what you want. Like, what are your values? What are your non-negotiables? Like, what does your dream lifestyle actually look like?
It's like painting that picture
Yes, exactly.
of where you're going.
Yes. And then once you kind of have that vision in place, then comes elimination.
Okay.
This is where you start getting rid of all the unnecessary things in your life that are just dragging you down, that are taking up your time and your energy.
I like it. So it could be like commitments you've made that you're dreading or just like, tasks you're always procrastinating on.
Or relationships that aren't serving you.
Yes. It's about creating space for the good stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. And then once you've kind of decluttered a little bit, we move on to automation,
Right?
which is like, how can you set up systems to handle the things that can't be eliminated?
Love it.
Whether it's using apps to manage your schedule or like hiring a VA to handle some tasks for you, or even just automating parts of your business.
So you're making things run more efficiently without you having to do everything.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
that brings us to the final step, which is liberation.
Okay. This is what we want.
This is the goal. This is like achieving freedom from that 9 to 5, having the time, the mobility to actually do what you want.
To live your life on your own terms.
Yes,
That's right.
exactly. But he makes a really good point here. He's like, having free time isn't enough. You have to actually design a life that is meaningful to you.
Right. Because I feel like that's a fear that a lot of people have. It's like, what if I get bored?
Yeah.
What if I actually get everything that I thought I wanted and then I don't know what to do with myself?
It's like the now what moment.
Exactly.
And, even Ferriss admits that, when he first kind of achieved this for himself, he had this moment of like, what he calls it the existential void.
Oh, well.
Like you have the time, you have the money, but you might feel kind of lost. So it's like, how do we avoid that?
Yeah. How do you actually make sure that your life has meaning, even if you're not working that traditional job?
Right. And so he talks about like finding those activities that really light you up.
Yeah.
Like things that are exciting, things that push you out of your comfort zone, things that help you grow.
It's more than just relaxing.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that lights you up from the inside out.
Yes. And he suggests like maybe experiment with like mini retirements. Like you don't have to wait until you're like 65 to retire. Take some extended breaks, try new things, explore different possibilities.
That could be anything, right?
Anything.
Like traveling to a different country or taking a class or working on that side hustle you've always wanted to do.
Exactly. Just to kind of like step out of your comfort zone and see what's out there, what sparks your interest.
I love it. And it doesn't have to be this big, huge thing.
No,
It could be like, this week, I'm going to do a staycation and I'm going to try something brand new every single day.
I love that.
You know,
Yeah.
just like little things.
Just that sense of curiosity.
Yeah, that curiosity, that adventure. He also talks about, social connection. It's so important.
It is. Especially when you're transitioning out of like a traditional work environment where you kind of have that built-in social, network. You have your work friends.
Yeah, you got your people.
So it's like, how do you find your people outside of that?
Mm.
And so he talks about finding ways to connect with people who share your interests, whether that's joining a club or taking a class or even just like, attending a workshop or something.
Correct.
Finding your people.
Finding your tribe, it's so important.
It really is. It's like that sense of community and belonging.
Support, inspiration, all of that.
Yes. And then he also talks about the power of giving back.
Oh, yeah.
Finding a way to contribute to something larger than yourself.
It gives you that sense of purpose.
Yes. It could be volunteering your time or donating to a cause or using your skills to help others. But that sense of purpose can be incredibly fulfilling.
So it's about finding that thing that lights you up, that's bigger than just your own goals and ambitions, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And the thing to remember is that lifestyle design is a journey.
Yes.
It's not like you reach this perfect state of balance and then you're good.
Right. It's not a destination.
It's not a destination. It's about making conscious choices every single day to create a life that you love, that aligns with your values.
It's an evolution.
Yes. And what you want might change. And that's okay.
Exactly.
That's part of the journey.
It's funny. We always talk about work-life balance like it's this magical thing.
Yeah.
Like you get the perfect.
The perfect ratio.
Yeah. But really, it sounds like, from what Ferriss is saying, it's more about designing a life where those two things aren't always fighting each other.
Exactly. It's about designing a life that you don't need to escape from,
Totally.
Like, you don't need a vacation from your life.
Because your work is something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's fulfilling.
Yes. And it's okay if your definition of success is different from other people's.
Totally. Because that corporate ladder thing, maybe that's not what we want to be on.
Right.
Maybe we just want to, travel for a month.
Yeah.
Or write a book.
Or just be more present.
Yeah.
Spend time with your family.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I love about this book. It's not just about getting out of the 9 to 5. It's about really questioning, why do we think life has to be this way?
Yeah, challenging the default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ferriss is like, well, why can't you design a work day that you're actually energized by? And what if you could incorporate travel and adventure into your life now and not wait till you're, retired?
Exactly.
But I think for a lot of people, it's like, okay, this sounds great, but
How?
how?
Yeah.
How do I actually put this into practice?
Well, and he talks about, just starting small, pick one new thing you want to try each week, a new skill,
Yeah.
new experience, even just a new way of thinking.
Just to kind of get that momentum going.
Exactly. Just to see that change is possible.
Yeah.
And, another thing he talks about is just surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yes.
That's huge.
It's so important,
Yeah.
finding those mentors
Yeah.
or peers who are doing the things that you want to do.
Support system.
Yes.
Your cheerleading squad.
Exactly, to
You would-
keep you going.
Because it's easy to get discouraged.
Yeah,
But when you have those people around you who are like, you got this, keep going,
you can do
it
it.
makes a huge difference.
So really, what I'm hearing is it's about taking ownership of your life. You get to decide what you want it to look like.
It's your life. You're in the driver's seat.
And you don't have to wait for anybody to give you permission to go after it.
And it's okay if it changes along the way.
Totally.
You're allowed to change your mind.
Exactly.
It's a journey.
It's about figuring out what makes you happy, what gives you a sense of purpose, and going after it.
Exactly.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. It's like you have way more power than you think you do to design a life that you actually love living.
You do. You have the power.
It starts with questioning the default. It starts with figuring out what you want and then taking action.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Doesn't have to happen overnight.
Yeah.
And you might just surprise yourself with what you can achieve when you actually put your mind to it.
You really will.
So go out there and design a life that you don't need to escape from. That's